Parents of Reddit, how did your daughters so win you over? When I was in 10th grade, a guy I liked came over. My dad heard him playing guitar and apparently that's all it takes for my dad to fall in love. That was the only time we hung out. I'm 31. He still asks about that guy. Dad, you need to get over him already. My daughter's so gonna call him John. Gained my full approval just recently. A little backstory. Me and my wife had an accidental baby just last year. We are in our late 40s. And my family was rather shocked considering we already have a 28-year-old son and a 22-year-old daughter at that point. This may sound strange so far but it will make sense later. My daughter met John in college and started dating after being friends for a year or so. Didn't take long after that before we met him and we thought he was a decent kid, if not a little bit socially awkward and sort of uncomfortable around us. All of her previous boyfriends were more outgoing and this kid was quiet. Didn't really think he was going to last. My daughter eventually got an internship out of country and now they're LTR, and I was skeptical whether or not this kid was going to stick around. Strangely enough, he visits the house and hangs out with my older son and we all talk and have dinner together pretty frequently, which is interesting considering my daughter never expected him to do this. I found out that the main reason that he visited us so often was because my daughter was worried that her new little brother would forget who she is while she was gone. So when John would play with our son when he thought nobody was around, he would show him pictures of my daughter making goofy faces to try to make sure that he will remember his big sister. When I brought it up with my daughter, she didn't know that John was doing this. That was probably the moment where I started wholeheartedly approving of him. Wow, that's touching. I was supposed to be one of those good Asian daughters that didn't date until I finished college. I got rebellious in sophomore year and decided to keep dating the guy who took me to winter formal. Mom actually liked him, dad refused to acknowledge him. One day, my dad mentioned he got a new car stereo and he was going to take it to Best Buy to have it installed. Boyfriend said, nope, let me handle it, and spent an entire Saturday afternoon installing the radio and cleaning up the wires in his dash. Dad loved him afterwards, basically treated him like his own son. Parents didn't even bat an eye afterwards when we started living in Sin a couple years later, but by that time he was an engineer, we were engaged, and I couldn't give a rat's ass. I had been casually seeing a guy for a couple weeks when one night we were out to dinner and I was having a particularly homesick night. I live 15 hours from my family and at this point I hadn't seen them in over 8 months. He joked and said that we should drive home and surprise my mom for Mother's Day that weekend. The next day, we were in the car driving. I've never seen my parents so surprised, also a little worried. I think their initial thoughts were that something had gone terribly wrong and I was there to deliver the news. My parents have loved him ever since. Not quite what was asked, but I knew I was there with my sus folks when her dad stopped giving me room temperature beers from the pantry and started giving me cold beers from the fridge. Upon meeting my teenage daughters, she was always embarrassed by me at that time, so she says, Dad, are you drunk? It's the middle of the day, and of course I wasn't drunk. I hesitate for a moment, and then just answer, yes. Her new so looks at me completely straight-faced and says, same. Sense of humor wins me over. I won my boyfriend's, now husband, parents over by throwing a party. It was his birthday and I had gotten a good number of people to show up for a surprise party. He was on the phone with his parents when he walked in and everyone yelled surprise. He got all teary-eyed and told his parents, I have to go. It's a surprise party. I didn't know I had so many friends. For good measure I sent them photos of the party as well. His mom particularly liked the set of photos that showed my son and friends battling a bomb-shaped grill that caught on fire and exploded. He got all teary-eyed and told his parents, I have to go. It's a surprise party. I didn't know I had so many friends. This really hit home for me. I'm very much that guy. Apparently, making my so smile. It seems that it was pretty rare enough for her mother to actually be surprised to see her smile. I like this. Doesn't have to be a big thing or gesture, just a smile. Not a parent but a brother. My parents are divorced and remarried, generally don't really get along with their respective ex. My sister and her fiance had a housewarming party not too long ago and invited both sets of parents, along with other family and friends. My soon-to-be brother-in-law and I have always gotten along great. Who doesn't love drinking and fishing? So we spent the night just drinking and enjoying ourselves. At one point though, he and my stepmom are talking, and he calls over my mom into the conversation. I'm standing with my sister and we're both dumbfounded. Our parents have been divorced for like 15 years, have never spoke to one another, and this guy just pulled two of them together for like a 20-30 minutes conversation. It absolutely blew my mind. The next morning, while my sister made pancakes and we nursed our hangovers, he told me the entire reason for the housewarming party was to see how my parents would react around one another, and if needed, it wasn't. Telling my parents that they're eventually going to have grandkids before long, and if they want to be a part of their lives they have to act like adults and be okay with seeing their ex every once in a while. The fact he was willing to do that for my sister completely set my mind at ease. I definitely liked him before, but that was the moment I knew he was perfect for my sister. This is my favorite one. I've read a lot of them. I'm the so of the daughter in this story. My girlfriend's dad basically hated me until the time we drove together down to Monterey from Austin and had to make conversation for 7 hours and pretend it wasn't awkward. He's an engineer, so I went with that and casually mentioned my desire to get a small CNC lathe for metal fabrication, or possibly build a basic XY controller to attach to a traditional lathe. Turns out his final project for graduation at college was to build a CNC lathe. We nerded out and started discussing the pros and cons of stepper motors versus servos. Then the conversation moved to Arduinos, and the rest is history. Now we get along handsomely, and it makes my girlfriend very uncomfortable. LOL. I love it. My good friend got dumped by his GF halfway through college after she cheated on him. Her dad called and said, "My daughter is a freaking moron. You know there is always so and so, her 1 year younger sister." When a dad's that ready to hand you any of his daughters, you win. Pecan pie. Yes, fixing computers helped. Yes, him being a nice guy helped. But I swear my husband won over my entire family and extended family on his pie alone. Quote from every family meal ever before we got married: "Is your boyfriend coming? Is he bringing that pecan pie? Now that we are married, hey, where's his pecan pie? You know you married a winner there. He makes great pies. If you know what I mean." My so bonded with my dad immediately by their mutual hatred of my older sister's ex-BF baby daddy. Actually, my younger sister also had a trash can of a BF at the time. When my so showed up with a car, a stable job, and actually treated me with respect, it was like a miracle. I think this is how my boyfriend won my family over too, just by not being my ex and having a car. I'll tell you the story of how my husband won over my dad. My dad has a sailboat, which he is kind of crazy about. My husband has a background in naval architecture. We went to visit my dad, and while we were on his boat in the marina, the guy in the slip next to us runs over. "My boat is taking on water," he says. "Come help me bail it out." "Don't worry," responds my father. My son-in-law is a naval architect. Something to note at this point in the story: my now husband and I had only been dating for like 8 months. We weren't even close to getting engaged, let alone married. But now all of a sudden boyfriend is his son-in-law. So now husband just goes with it. Sure, I, the son-in-law, will see if I can help. He gets on the guy's boat and sees that there's water seeping through the floorboards. He thinks this is weird, given that the pump is going and the boat isn't listing or anything. So he gets down, sticks his finger in the water, and licks it. It's fresh water. Now husband says, "Your bilge is leaking. Did you remember to turn off the hose after you finished filling up your freshwater tank?" And that, my friends, is how my husband became a legend in Dad's marina, and my dad's favorite person of all time. I know the exact moment I won my wife's family over. I could see it in her father's eyes. It was high school, before we started dating. The first time I went over to her house. Actually, her father and 2 brothers are all pretty tall, and I'm average height. It's a very alpha male household, and they had this thing they like to do to potential boyfriends. So when my wife left the room to go to the bathroom or whatever, all 3 of them stood, lined up shoulder to shoulder, and loomed over me. Blank-faced, glaring down, no words, no motion, just staring, and looming. I found out later that her last boyfriend almost cried when they did this to him. I've always been really socially awkward, but an odd part of that awkwardness is that I'm never intimidated by people. I don't know why, but they just don't frighten me. I slowly stood up, looking them all in the eye, and then poked her dad right in the tummy. I said, "Boop." He stared for a second, and then a giant grin split his face. It turns out that he's a massive goofball. From that moment on, I was a member of the family. The whole dating and marriage thing was just a formality to them. My word, that mental image made me crack up for the last 5 minutes. I'm a martial arts instructor, among other things. I caught my daughter's boyfriend looking at my belt rack, 5th degree black belt, and trophies from when I was much younger, and he said, "Are all those yours?" "Yep." "So you know how to throw someone?" "Yep." "Could you teach me?" How much of a setup did I need? I took him into the backyard and threw his skinny ass around for about 45 minutes, and every time he hit the ground, he got back up with a huge smile and said that was awesome. Show me how. So I took him to my class with my daughter and had her practice throws on him. He never complained, never flinched, and never bitched. After class, I told my daughter I liked him, so she broke up with him. That's Amazie. Oh, never mind. Taking good care of my daughter during Hurricane Sandy. It was my parents, actually. When my mom first met my dad, he was working in an auto body repair shop, actually dang good at what he does. Well, to surprise my mom's dad, he borrowed my grandfather's 1968 SS Camaro, which had been nearly totaled in a car wreck a few years back, and completely repaired it. When they first met, my dad shook my grandfather's hand, said, "Mr. Haynes, my name is Kevin. Why don't you come outside?" His Camaro was sitting outside looking almost brand new. My mom says it was the only time she has ever seen her dad cry. My fiance won over my parents individually, but nothing beats my stepdad. My stepdad loves fun facts and they're always fairly obscure and I can never answer them, but that only makes it more fun for him. So the three of us, fiance, stepdad and I, are sitting around watching The Simpsons, and my stepdad goes, "Who's that band?" when Spanish Flea comes on. My fiance immediately answers with Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. My stepdad was dumbfounded and I'm pretty sure that's when our relationship got his seal of approval. A command of thoroughly useless information has never failed to impress. My wife's dad told me I'm the only boyfriend he ever liked. He said my strategy of whenever I would call to talk to her and he answered the phone, instead of just saying, "Is my wife there or can I talk to my wife?" I would always say, "Hi Mr. Her Dad. How are you?" and make brief small talk before asking for her. It wasn't a strategy. It's just how I was raised and or southern politeness, but it worked. Us southerners, when you date one of us, you date all of us. I worked in an ice cream shop with my current so and her mom came in one night. Without knowing it was her mom at the time, me being friendly, I struck up a conversation with her while I got her ice cream and food for her. 3 months later I start dating the girl I worked with and I immediately recognized her mom when I met her for the first time. The first thing her mom said was, "Well, you already have my approval." Her father was always very cool on me, distant. Conversations usually went, "Hello sir, how are you?" "Good." I was reserved to being disliked forever until I heard him talking about football. I mentioned how I was quarterback in high school and saw his eyes light up. We talked for a solid 2 hours about football, NASCAR F1, and all the other interests we shared that he didn't care to learn about for all those months before. My so recently told me he was bragging about me to the guys who sit near them at the local AAA baseball team's home games. We're BFF now and it's even more terrifying than when he ignored me. We're BFF now and it's even more terrifying than when he ignored me. Well yeah, cause now he has to kill you if you frick up. Apparently fixing all of her family's computer and other technology related problems doesn't help. In college, I was sleeping with my then boyfriend in his bed, with his roommate also sleeping in the same room 4 feet away, and I wet the bed for the first time since I was out of diapers. I woke up early, and after realizing what happened, tried to sneak out of bed. He woke up to find me humiliated, shaking, and then bursting into tears. He assured me everything was okay. He knew it was an accident. He still was very attracted to me and let me shower first. When I told my mom how he handled it, she was sold. Now I have to convince her my current BF is just as great. Looks like you'll have to pee in his bed and see how he handles it. Our daughter came home from college with a boy she had been dating for a few weeks. They weren't serious, but he lived too far away to go home for Thanksgiving. That weekend, her old high school flame dropped by. We didn't like him much. He had been very abusive when our daughter was dating him. When he showed up, he tried to convince our daughter to go someplace with him to talk things over. She didn't want to, and so he started getting loud and obnoxious. The new boyfriend was trying to give her some space and not be the possessive caveman type, but when he heard the old boyfriend call our daughter the C word, he came out on the porch and threw a wicked punch at the guy. Unfortunately, he missed, and he got the worst of the ensuing scuffle before I could break it up. But he got a few good licks in, and I'm pretty sure some of them would leave nice bruises. Not that I condone brawling, mind you. Old boyfriend skulked off, and we brought the new boyfriend in and got him cleaned up. He was only 19, but he got a nice cold beer with dinner. They dated a couple of years, but eventually broke up. She's had a few boyfriends since, but he's the only one I ever addressed as son. You have been visited by the doggo of dandy rides. Like this video and have a dandy day. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.